What if I told you that some of the most powerful natural energy boosters on Earth are not hiding in your coffee cup, not locked away in pharmaceutical labs, and not cooked up in some chemical factory, but growing quietly in forests, mountains, and backyards the way old-time folks used to trust back in the day? We've been taught to believe that if you want real energy, you need another pot of coffee, another expensive supplement, or some flashy drink in a can, when the truth is, what our grandparents knew was often far simpler, far cheaper, and a whole lot closer to the earth. Most people don't know this, but there are plants in this world that can help support stamina, focus, and endurance in ways that go far beyond that quick coffee jolt and the crash that comes after it. Some of them have been used by Native Americans, some were prized by ancient empires, and some were trusted by hard-working people who needed lasting strength from sunrise to sunset without all the modern nonsense. Stick around, because number 11 on this list is a forgotten American native plant that once gave people clean energy right here in this country, long before coffee took over the breakfast table. And number 3 is so powerful that it was prized like treasure in the American wilderness and still has folks talking today. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, because we post new videos every week that will help you rediscover old-fashioned plants, natural remedies, and homestead wisdom that can keep you healthier, stronger, and more self-reliant. So let's get into it. Number 1. Guaraná, the wild spark of endless energy. Back in the day, deep in the Amazon, guaraná wasn't just some exotic seed people talked about in passing. Indigenous tribes, especially the Guarani people, treated it like a gift from heaven. They would grind the seeds, mix them into water, and use it to fight fatigue, sharpen the mind, and keep the body moving through long days of hunting, fishing, and survival. What our grandparents knew in their own way, and what old-time people all over the world respected, is that the earth often gave folks exactly what they needed long before laboratories ever showed up. Guaraná was one of those treasures, a natural source of steady strength when life demanded endurance. Modern science is finally catching up, and it turns out those little guaraná seeds are packed with natural caffeine, along with compounds like theobromine, theophylline, and powerful antioxidants called tannins. Now, here's what makes that so interesting. Coffee gives you a quick jolt, but guaraná has often been valued for a slower, more sustained lift. That is because its natural plant compounds may help the body release that stimulation in a gentler way. In plain American English, it can feel less like a sudden spike and more like a long burning fire in the stove. That is why so many people have turned to it for mental clarity, stamina, and getting through the day without feeling like they crashed an hour later. So how can you use it today? The most common way is as guaraná powder, usually mixed into water, smoothies, or herbal blends. Some folks also use it in capsules, but if you're the kind of person who likes doing things the old-fashioned way, the powder route feels closer to the plant's roots. You only need a small amount because this stuff is potent. A little goes a long way. Many people like it in the morning or early afternoon when they need a lift but don't want to keep pouring cup after cup of coffee. And as always, especially for older folks, it makes sense to start small and pay attention to how your body responds. So why did we forget about something like guaraná? Well, because Big Pharma and the modern synthetic energy industry taught people to look for quick fixes in cans, pills, and lab-made stimulants instead of remembering the plants that carried people through hard times for generations. We've been sold the idea that energy has to come from a drive-through, a chemical-loaded drink, or some fancy product with a slick label. Meanwhile, one of the most respected natural energy plants in the world has been sitting quietly in the background, waiting for people to rediscover what old cultures never forgot. Think of it as nature's slow-burning lantern, giving you a steady glow when coffee hits like a match and burns out just as fast. Number 2. Yerba Mate, the gentle torch of lasting energy. Back in the day, long before energy drinks came in neon cans and coffee got dressed up like dessert, the people of South America already had a daily ritual for strength and stamina. Yerba Mate was treasured by the Guaraní and later shared across farms, villages, and working families who needed clear minds and steady bodies from sunup to sundown. Old-time folks understood something we've drifted away from in modern America. When a plant could lift your spirits, sharpen your thinking, and help you carry on through a hard day's work, you respected it. You didn't need a lab coat to tell you it worked. You just knew. Modern science is finally catching up, and researchers have found that yerba mate contains natural caffeine, along with theobromine, polyphenols, and saponins. That is a mighty interesting combination. The caffeine can help wake up the brain, while theobromine is often described as giving a smoother, gentler kind of alertness. Then you've got those antioxidants helping fight oxidative stress, which matters more and more as we get older. In simple terms, yerba mate can support energy, focus, and even mood without always bringing the same jittery wallop people get from strong coffee. It's more balanced, more even, and for many folks, easier on the nerves. So how can you use it today? The classic way is to steep the dried leaves in hot water and sip it as a tea. You do not need fancy equipment, though some people enjoy the traditional gourd and straw. If you're keeping things simple, just brew it like an herbal tea and drink it in the morning or early afternoon. Some folks like it plain, while others add a little lemon or mint. If you're trying it for the first time, go easy and see how your body handles it, especially if you are sensitive to stimulants. The beauty of yerba mate is that it fits right into a peaceful daily routine, almost like the kind of steady comfort our grandparents appreciated. So, why did we forget about something this useful? Because Big Pharma and the modern stimulant industry made people believe energy had to come from synthetic shortcuts, loaded-up pills, or sugary drinks with labels you can barely pronounce. Somewhere along the line, we stopped trusting the simple plant traditions that carried hard-working people for generations. Yerba mate didn't disappear because it failed. It got pushed aside by a culture that profits more when people forget the old ways. Think of it as a cast-iron wood stove for the mind. Steady, dependable heat that warms the whole day instead of one quick flash that fades by noon. Number 3. American Ginseng, the quiet root of steady strength. Back in the day, American ginseng was one of those plants old woodsmen, mountain families, and Native American tribes knew was worth its weight in gold. Long before modern America got hooked on fast fixes, this humble root was gathered from the forests and prized for restoring strength, especially when the body felt worn down and the mind felt tired. Cherokee and other tribes valued it as a tonic plant, something to help a person recover, endure, and keep going through hard seasons. What our grandparents knew, and what old-time herbal traditions never forgot, is that not all energy comes with fireworks. Some of the best energy comes quietly, like a good night's sleep or a strong pot of soup after a hard winter day. Modern science is finally catching up, and researchers now know that American ginseng contains active compounds called ginsenosides, along with beneficial polysaccharides and antioxidant compounds that may help support the body's stress response, mental performance, and overall vitality. That is what makes this plant so special. Coffee mainly pushes the nervous system harder, but American ginseng has long been valued as more of an adaptogen, meaning it may help the body handle stress and fatigue in a steadier, more balanced way. In plain English, it does not just whip the horse, it helps feed the horse. That is a big difference, especially for older folks who want lasting energy instead of a fast rise followed by a hard crash. So how can you use it today? The old-fashioned way is simple. You can slice the dried root and simmer it into a tea, or use it as a tincture if you prefer convenience. Some folks even chew a small piece of the dried root the way people did back in the day. It is often used in the morning or early afternoon when you want a lift in focus and stamina without feeling overcooked. And because it is a strong herb, a little goes a long way. Many people like to use it during times of stress, recovery, or plain old tiredness, when the body needs support, not just stimulation. So why did we forget about American ginseng? Because Big Pharma and the modern world of synthetic medicine taught people to chase symptoms instead of supporting the whole body. We were sold pills for this, powders for that, and energy products that hit hard and wear off fast. Meanwhile, one of North America's own treasured roots got pushed into the background. It was easier to market quick chemical boosts than to remind people that some of the best medicine in the world was growing right here in our own forests. Think of it as an old hand pump at the homestead. It does not blast water all at once, but it gives you a steady, reliable flow exactly when you need it most. Number 4. Eleuthero, the iron root of everyday endurance. Back in the day, when people lived closer to the land and farther from pharmacies, roots like Eleuthero were treasured for one simple reason: they helped folks keep going. In the cold, rugged regions of Asia and Russia, this hardy plant earned a reputation among laborers, hunters, and old-world herbal healers as a strength builder for long days and hard seasons. It was not the kind of plant that gave you a flashy burst and left you flat. No, sir. It was respected as a steady companion, something a person turned to when life demanded grit. What our grandparents knew, and what old-time herbal traditions understood well, is that real energy is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet endurance, the kind that carries you through. Modern science is finally catching up, and researchers have found that Eleuthero contains active compounds called eleuthericides, along with plant antioxidants that may help the body adapt to physical and mental stress. That is what makes this plant so interesting. Unlike coffee, which mainly kicks the nervous system into high gear, Eleuthero has long been valued as an adaptogen, meaning it may help the body respond to fatigue in a steadier, more balanced way. In plain American English, it is less about revving the engine and more about helping the engine handle the hills. For older adults especially, that kind of support can sound a whole lot better than a fast jolt followed by the shakes. So how can you use it today? Most folks use Eleuthero as a tea, tincture, or capsule. But if you like the old-fashioned way, simmering the dried root into a simple decoction is about as traditional as it gets. Let it steep low and slow, then sip it in the morning or early afternoon when you need lasting stamina. Some people use it during busy times, after illness, or when stress has simply worn them thin. It is not about feeling wired, it is about feeling capable. And as always, with a strong root like this, a little common sense goes a long way. So why did we forget about Eleuthero? Because Big Pharma and the modern synthetic medicine world taught people to think only in extremes. Either you are exhausted and need a stimulant, or you are worn out and need a prescription. Somewhere along the way, we lost the old understanding that plants could support the body gently, steadily, and wisely. Eleuthero did not disappear because it stopped working. It got overshadowed by an industry that makes more money when people forget the simple tools nature has always offered. Think of it as an old farm mule. Maybe not flashy, maybe not fast, but dependable enough to carry the load all day long without giving out. Number 5. Rhodiola Rosea, the mountain shield of tireless energy. Back in the day, up in the cold, unforgiving mountains of Europe and Asia, Rhodiola Rosea was the kind of plant people leaned on when life was hard and the weather was harder. Old folk traditions from Siberia and Scandinavia treated this root like a survival tonic, something used to help people endure bitter winters, exhausting labor, and long stretches of physical strain. Even Viking stories and northern herbal lore have long linked hardy mountain plants with stamina and resilience. What our grandparents knew, and what old-world healers understood well, is that the harshest places often grow the strongest remedies. When a plant could help a person keep going through cold, hunger, and fatigue, folks remembered it. Modern science is finally catching up, And researchers now know rhodiola contains active compounds like rosavins and salidroside, along with antioxidant plant chemicals that may help the body handle stress and support mental and physical energy. That is where this plant really shines. Coffee gives you a fast nudge, but rhodiola has been studied more as an adaptogen, meaning it may help the body respond better to fatigue, tension, and mental wear and tear. In simple terms, it does not just light a fire under you, it may help your body stop wasting fuel in the first place. That is a mighty different kind of energy, especially for older folks who want steadiness, focus, and endurance without feeling wrung out. So, how can you use it today? Most people take rhodiola as a tea, tincture, or capsule, usually earlier in the day when they want support for energy and clear thinking. If you like the old-fashioned route, a tincture or a simple herbal preparation works just fine. Many folks turn to it during stressful times, when they feel mentally drained, or when everyday fatigue starts creeping in more than it used to. The key is not to overdo it. This is one of those plants where a modest amount often does the trick. You are aiming for balance, not a lightning bolt. So why did we forget about something like rhodiola? Because Big Pharma and the modern world of synthetic medicine trained people to think energy only comes in two forms, either a harsh stimulant or a prescription bottle. The old idea that a mountain root could help the body adapt, recover, and keep going just did not fit the modern sales pitch. And that is a shame, because while flashy products came and went, this quiet little root kept doing what it had always done, helping hard-working people endure. Think of it as an old stone chimney in a winter cabin, steady, dependable, and built to keep the heat in when everything outside is trying to wear you down. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure to hit the subscribe button to stay tuned for more videos like this. Number 6. Ashwagandha has been another easier Monday. In the world healing traditions of India, this root was used for weakness, exhaustion, and the kind of deep tiredness that no nap seemed to fix. It was not thought of as some flashy pick-me-up. No, sir. It was respected as something that helped restore a person from the inside out. The old herbalists believed it could strengthen the body, steady the nerves, and help a worn-out soul find its footing again. What our grandparents knew in their own way, and what ancient healers understood clearly, is that real energy does not always come from being wound up. Sometimes it comes from being built back up. Modern science is finally catching up, and researchers have found that ashwagandha contains active compounds called withanolides, along with antioxidant and anti-stress plant chemicals that may help support the body's response to stress. That is what makes this plant so different from coffee. Coffee can push you forward fast, but ashwagandha has been studied more as an adaptogen, meaning it may help the body handle strain, tension, and fatigue in a steadier way. In plain American English, it is not just about making you feel awake. It is about helping your body stop feeling so worn out in the first place. For older adults especially, that can mean clearer thinking, steadier energy, and less of that jittery, worn-thin feeling. So how can you use it today? The old-fashioned way is to use the dried root as a powder, stir it into warm milk or tea, and take it as part of a daily routine. These days, many folks also use capsules or tinctures, but there is something comforting about preparing it the simple way, the way people did back in the day. Some take it in the morning for balance through the day, while others prefer it in the evening, because it can also support rest and calm. That is the beauty of this plant. It is not trying to crack a whip over your nerves. It is trying to help your body find a healthier rhythm. So why did we forget about ashwagandha? Because Big Pharma and modern synthetic medicine taught people to separate everything into boxes. One pill for stress, another for sleep, another for fatigue, another for mood. But the old herbal tradition saw the body as one connected whole. Ashwagandha did not fit the modern business model because it was never just about one symptom. It was about helping the whole person feel stronger, steadier, and more resilient. And that kind of wisdom got pushed aside when quick fixes became more profitable than lasting support. Think of it as an old rocking chair on the porch, steadying the body, calming the nerves, and giving you the kind of quiet strength that lasts long after the noise has passed. Number 7. Maca Root, the Highland engine of lasting vitality. Back in the day, high in the harsh mountains of Peru, where the air was thin and the land was tough, Maca Root was one of those plants people counted on when they needed strength to endure. The Inca people prized it so highly that it was often given to warriors, messengers, and hard-working families who had to keep going in some of the roughest growing conditions on Earth. Now that tells you something right there. When a root can earn its reputation in a place where survival itself is no small thing, folks tend to remember it. What our grandparents knew, and what old-world farming people understood well, is that the strongest remedies often come from the hardest ground. Modern science is finally catching up, and researchers have found that maca contains unique plant compounds like macamides and macaines, along with glucosinolates, amino acids, and important minerals. That combination is one reason this root has been studied for stamina, mood, and overall vitality. Unlike coffee, which mainly leans on caffeine to force a quick burst of alertness, maca is naturally caffeine-free. That is what makes it mighty interesting. Instead of hitting the body like a hammer, it may support energy in a steadier, more nourishing way. In plain American English, it is less like slamming the gas pedal and more like tuning up the whole engine. So how can you use it today? The simplest way is maca powder. You can stir it into oatmeal, blend it into a smoothie, or mix it into warm milk or tea if you like doing things the old-fashioned way. Some people use capsules, but the powder is about as homestead-friendly as it gets. Start with a small amount, because a little can go a long way, and use it in the morning or midday when you want steady support. Folks often like it because it is easy to work into a daily routine without making them feel wired or shaky. So why did we forget about something like maca? Because Big Pharma and the modern synthetic medicine world taught people to look for instant stimulation instead of deep nourishment. We got sold on the idea that energy had to come from caffeine, sugar, or some laboratory-made shortcut. Meanwhile, roots like maca, which supported hard-working people for generations, got pushed aside because they were too simple, too natural, and too hard to patent. The old wisdom did not disappear because it was wrong. It disappeared because there was more money in making people forget it. Think of it as an old tractor on the family farm. Not flashy, not loud, but dependable enough to keep pulling long after the shiny new machines start sputtering out. Number 8. Camellia sinensis, the timeless leaf of calm alertness. Back in the day, long before folks were lining up for oversized coffees and sugar-loaded energy drinks, old civilizations were already leaning on the simple green leaf of Camellia sinensis. In China and across much of Asia, green tea was treasured not just as a drink, but as a daily tonic for clarity, endurance, and steady living. Monks drank it to stay alert during long hours of prayer and study. Working people drank it to stay sharp without getting all stirred up. And that old wisdom ought to sound familiar, because what our grandparents knew is that the best things in life were often plain, dependable, and right there in the cupboard. Green tea was never about excess. It was about balance. Modern science is finally catching up, and researchers have found that green tea contains natural caffeine, along with powerful antioxidants called catechins, especially EGCG, plus an amino acid called L-theanine. Now that is where things get mighty interesting. The caffeine can help improve alertness, while L-theanine may help promote a calmer, more focused state of mind. In simple American English, that means green tea can wake you up without making you feel like your nerves are bouncing off the walls. It is a more even kind of energy, and those antioxidants may also help the body deal with everyday wear and tear that builds up as we age. So how can you use it today? About as simply as can be. Take a teaspoon of good green tea leaves, or a tea bag if that is what you have, steep it in hot but not boiling water for a couple of minutes, and sip it in the morning or early afternoon. Some folks enjoy it plain, while others add a little lemon. The important thing is not to scorch it, because that can make it bitter. If you're trying to cut back on coffee but still want a little lift, green tea is one of the easiest old-fashioned swaps there is. It is simple, gentle, and fits right into a quiet daily rhythm. So why did we forget about something this reliable? Because Big Pharma and the modern synthetic energy world made people believe energy had to come fast, loud, and loaded with chemicals. Somewhere along the line, we stopped valuing the quiet strength of simple plants and started chasing bigger jolts, sweeter drinks, and flashier promises. Green tea did not get forgotten because it stopped helping people. It got overshadowed by a culture that profits more from overstimulation than from steady well-being. Think of it as an old pocket watch. Quiet, dependable, and steady, helping you move through the day with calm precision instead of all the racket of a factory whistle. Number 9. Schisandra, the 5-flavor berry of steady drive. Back in the day, Schisandra was the kind of plant old healers paid close attention to. In the forests and mountain regions of China and parts of Russia, these bright red berries were treasured as a tonic for stamina, resilience, and what folks used to call staying power. Hunters, laborers, and herbal traditions alike respected Schisandra because it was said to help people endure long days, harsh weather, and plain old exhaustion. They even called it the 5-flavor berry because it carries sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and pungent notes all at once. Now that sounds like something out of an old folk tale, doesn't it? But what our grandparents knew, and what old-world herbalists understood, is that when one little berry could do a whole lot of jobs, you kept it close by. Modern science is finally catching up, and researchers have found that Schisandra contains powerful plant compounds called lignans, along with antioxidants and other bioactive substances that may help support energy, stress response, and mental performance. That is where this berry gets mighty interesting. Unlike coffee, which leans hard on caffeine to push the body forward, Schisandra has long been valued more as an adaptogen, meaning it may help the body handle stress and fatigue in a steadier, more balanced way. In plain American English, it does not just slap you awake. It helps the body keep its footing when life starts pulling at you from every direction. For older folks especially, that can mean a clearer mind and more dependable energy without feeling all wound up. So how can you use it today? The old-fashioned way is simple enough. Take the dried berries and simmer them into a tea, letting them steep until the water pulls out that rich, tart flavor. Some folks also use Schisandra as a tincture or powder, but the tea is about as close to the traditional way as you can get. A lot of people like it in the morning or around midday when they want support for focus and stamina. And because the flavor is strong, some folks mix it with a little honey or blend it with other herbs. It is not a fancy plant that needs fancy handling. It just needs a little patience, the way most good things do. So why did we forget about something like Schisandra? Because Big Pharma and modern synthetic medicine trained people to think in pieces instead of seeing the whole picture. One product for energy, one pill for stress, another for brain fog, another for burnout. But old-time herbal wisdom understood that the body is connected, and some plants work best by supporting that whole system together. Schisandra got pushed aside not because it stopped being useful, but because a 5-flavor berry that quietly helps the body adapt does not make nearly as much money as a shelf full of quick fixes. Think of it as an old barn pulley system, simple, sturdy, and able to help you lift more than you thought you could without straining the whole frame. Number 10. Astragalus, the protective root of deep endurance. Back in the day, Astragalus was the sort of plant old healers kept close at hand when folks were run down, worn thin, or facing a hard season. In traditional Chinese herbal practice, this root was prized for helping build what they saw as the body's inner reserve, the deep kind of strength that carries a person through long work days, bitter weather, and plain old exhaustion. And that old wisdom is not so different from what our grandparents believed here in America. They knew that when a person kept getting drained, you did not just keep whipping the body forward. You nourished it. You rebuilt it. Astragalus was one of those steady, old-world roots respected for helping people stay resilient when life kept demanding more. Modern science is finally catching up, and researchers have found that astragalus contains helpful plant compounds like polysaccharides, flavonoids, and saponins, along with antioxidant activity that may support the immune system and help the body respond better to stress. Now that matters because energy is not always just about stimulation. Sometimes low energy comes from the body being worn down and overburdened. Unlike coffee, which gives you a quick push, astragalus has long been valued as more of a builder. In plain American English, it is less about ringing the alarm bell and more about reinforcing the whole house. That is why so many old herbal systems looked at it as a root for stamina, recovery, and lasting strength. So how can you use it today? The old-fashioned way is one of the easiest there is. Take slices of dried astragalus root and simmer them gently in water to make a tea or broth. A lot of folks even toss the root into soups, stews, or homemade stock and let it cook low and slow, then remove the pieces before eating. That is a real back-in-the-day kind of remedy right there. You can also find it in tinctures and capsules, but the broth method feels closest to what old-time people would have done. It is often used as part of a regular routine when someone feels depleted and wants steady support instead of a fast jolt. So why did we forget about something like astragalus? Because Big Pharma and the modern synthetic medicine world taught people to chase immediate symptoms instead of strengthening the body over time. We got used to thinking energy had to come from stimulants, sugar, or some man-made shortcut. Meanwhile, roots like astragalus, which were respected for helping the body build resilience little by little, got pushed into the background. It is hard to sell patience in a bottle, and that is exactly why these old plant traditions were so easy for modern culture to overlook. Think of it as an old farmhouse foundation, quiet, unseen, and not flashy at all, but strong enough to keep everything standing when the storms start rolling in. Number 11. Yaupon Holly, the native leaf of clean country energy. Back in the day, Yaupon Holly was not some forgotten shrub in the woods. It was a respected plant right here in North America, used by Native American tribes long before coffee ever became the king of the breakfast table. In the Southeast, people brewed its leaves into a strong black tea that was shared in gatherings, ceremonies, and long days of work. Old-timers on this continent knew something most folks today have never even heard. America had its own natural caffeine plant growing wild all along. That is the kind of thing what our grandparents knew would have appreciated. Simple, local, useful, and hiding in plain sight. Modern science is finally catching up. And Yaupon contains natural caffeine along with theobromine and antioxidant plant compounds called polyphenols. Now that is a mighty interesting mix. The caffeine can help with alertness and energy, while theobromine may contribute to a smoother, gentler lift. In plain American English, Yaupon can feel less like a whip crack and more like a steady nudge. It wakes you up without necessarily hitting you over the head the way strong coffee sometimes does. And because it is packed with those plant compounds, it brings more to the table than just stimulation. So how can you use it today? The simplest way is to brew the dried, roasted leaves like tea. Just steep them in hot water for a few minutes, and you have yourself an old-fashioned American energy drink the way nature intended. Some folks drink it plain, while others add a little honey or lemon. It is a fine choice in the morning when you want a lift, or in the early afternoon when you need a little help getting over that sleepy spell. And if you are the kind of person who likes doing things close to the old ways, Yaupon has a real homestead feel to it. Simple plant, simple preparation, steady result. So why did we forget about something like Yaupon? Because Big Pharma and the modern stimulant industry taught people to chase flashy energy in a can, while imported coffee and synthetic drinks pushed our own native traditions right out of sight. And let's be honest, there was not much money in reminding Americans that a clean, caffeinated leaf had been growing in their own backyard all along. Just like a lot of old knowledge, Yaupon got brushed aside because modern culture prefers convenience, branding, and chemical shortcuts over remembering what was already here. Think of it as America's own cast-iron tea kettle, plain, dependable, and full of the kind of steady warmth that gets you moving without all the noise. Number 12. Guayusa, the Rainusa, the freed and break. Though back in the day, deep in the Amazon, Guayusa was the kind of plant families greeted before sunrise. In Ecuador especially, indigenous people would gather in the early morning darkness, brew this leaf into a strong tea, and sip it together before heading out to hunt, fish, or work the land. It was more than a drink. It was part of the rhythm of life, the kind of simple, daily ritual old-time people trusted because it helped them stay alert, steady, and ready for whatever the day brought. What our grandparents knew, and what folks living close to nature have always understood, is that the best energy often comes from a plant you can prepare with your own two hands, not from something cooked up in a factory. Modern science is finally catching up, and Guayusa contains natural caffeine, along with theobromine, polyphenols, and antioxidants. That combination is what makes this leaf so mighty interesting. The caffeine can help sharpen alertness, while theobromine may help give a smoother, gentler feeling of energy. Then you have those antioxidants, which help the body deal with everyday stress and wear. In plain American English, Guayusa can feel less like a hard slap and more like a steady hand on your shoulder. It lifts you up without always bringing that jittery, overcooked feeling some folks get from strong coffee. So how can you use it today? The easiest way is just like the old rainforest families did it. Steep the dried leaves in hot water for several minutes and drink it as a tea. Some folks brew it strong in the morning as a coffee substitute, while others enjoy it in the early afternoon for a clean little boost without reaching for another cup of coffee. You can drink it plain or add a bit of lemon or honey if that suits your taste. It is simple, practical, and easy enough for anybody who likes old-fashioned remedies that do not need a chemistry degree to understand. So why did we forget about something like Guayusa? Because Big Pharma and the modern synthetic energy industry trained people to believe that energy had to come in shiny cans, sugary bottles, or pills with names nobody can pronounce. Meanwhile, a hard-working leaf that had been helping people greet the morning for generations was left sitting in the shadows. Just like so many natural remedies, Guayusa got overlooked because there is more money in selling complicated stimulants than there is in reminding people that the earth already gave us steady fuel. Think of it as an old kerosene lamp, quiet, reliable, and bright enough to carry you through the early hours without burning the whole house down. Number 13, tea is the everyday leaf of gentle get up and go. Back in the day, the tea plant was one of the most trusted companions a hard-working person could have. Long before modern folks filled their kitchens with energy powders and canned stimulants, families across the world were steeping the leaves of this simple plant for comfort, clarity, and steady energy. From old mountain villages in Asia to front porches and farmhouse tables here in America, tea became part of daily life because it did something people have always needed. It helped them feel awake, settled, and ready to face the day. What our grandparents knew is that you did not always need something loud and fancy. Sometimes all you needed was a good hot cup made from a dependable leaf. Modern science is finally catching up, and the tea plant contains natural caffeine, along with antioxidants called catechins, and a calming amino acid known as L-theanine. Now that is a mighty useful combination. The caffeine helps wake up the mind, while L-theanine may help smooth out the rough edges, so the energy feels calmer and more balanced. In plain American English, tea does not always hit you like a freight train the way strong coffee can. It is more like a steady morning breeze through an open window. You feel refreshed, clearer, and more ready to get moving without feeling like your nerves have been put through a wringer. So how can you use it today? Simple as can be. Take the dried leaves, steep them in hot water for a few minutes, and you have a traditional energy tonic folks have trusted for generations. Brew it lighter if you want something gentle, or stronger if you need a bit more lift. You can drink it plain, add a little lemon, or even a touch of honey if that suits you. Some people enjoy it first thing in the morning, while others use it in the afternoon when they want a little pickup without pouring another heavy cup of coffee. It is easy, affordable, and about as old-fashioned as it gets. So why did we forget about the plain old tea plant? Because Big Pharma and the modern stimulant industry convinced people that energy had to be stronger, faster, and more dramatic. Tea was too simple, too ordinary, too close to what our grandparents knew. Modern culture likes to sell excitement in a package, but the humble tea plant never needed flashy labels or synthetic ingredients to do its job. It got overlooked because it was familiar, and sometimes the most useful things are the ones people stop noticing. Think of it as an old front porch swing, steady, comforting, and just enough to get you moving without ever throwing you off balance.
Number 14. Kola Nut, the bitter kernel of bold energy. Back in the day, long before modern energy drinks started hollering from store shelves, the kola nut was already earning its keep in West Africa. It was carried by traders, shared in village gatherings, and valued as a plant that could help folks stay alert through long journeys, hard labor, and long stretches under the hot sun. In many communities, offering kola was a sign of hospitality and respect, which tells you this was no ordinary seed. It had a place in everyday life. What our grandparents knew, and what old-time people around the world understood, is that when a plant could wake up the mind and steady the body, you kept it close and passed the knowledge down. Modern science is finally catching up, and kola nut contains natural caffeine along with theobromine and other plant compounds that can support alertness and mental energy. That is what makes it so interesting. The caffeine gives that familiar lift, but the natural mix of compounds has long made kola feel like more than just a quick jolt. In plain American English, it is one of those old-world plant stimulants that can help shake off sluggishness and get the gears turning. It is bitter, yes, but that bitterness often goes hand in hand with some of the strongest plant medicines and tonics people used back in the day. So how can you use it today? Traditionally, people chewed small pieces of the nut itself. But these days, it is more commonly found in powders, extracts, herbal blends, or capsules. If someone wants to try it the old-fashioned way, a small amount of kola powder can be mixed into warm water or an herbal drink. The key is moderation, because this is a potent plant. You do not need much. It is the kind of thing folks would use in the morning or early afternoon when they need a little get up and go without brewing pot after pot of coffee. So why did we forget about something like kola nut? Because Big Pharma and the modern synthetic energy business taught people to chase flashy cans, lab-made stimulants, and sugar-loaded shortcuts instead of remembering the old plant traditions that kept hard-working people going for generations. And once industry found ways to strip natural plants down, process them, and sell them back in shiny packages, the original wisdom got pushed aside. The old knowledge was not lost because it stopped working. It was buried under marketing, convenience, and a culture that forgot how to trust what came from the earth. Think of it as an old hand-crank generator, simple, sturdy, and able to spark the lights back on when your system starts running low. Number 15. Cacao, the sacred bean of Heartlift. Cacao was not a candy bar ingredient, it was a sacred food. The Maya and Aztec peoples treasured cacao so deeply they used it in ceremonies,
honored it as a gift from the gods, and drank it as a rich, bitter tonic for strength and vitality. Warriors, travelers, and rulers all valued it because it could nourish the body and sharpen the spirit. That ought to tell you something. Long before sugar and factory processing got their hands on it, cacao was respected as a serious plant food. What our grandparents knew, and what old world people understood, is that some of the best energy does not come from a jolt. It comes from deep nourishment that lifts both body and mood. Modern science is finally catching up, and cacao is loaded with natural compounds like theobromine, flavonoids, magnesium, and polyphenols. Now that is a mighty powerful lineup. Theobromine gives a gentler, longer-lasting lift than coffee's fast punch, while flavonoids may help support circulation and brain function. Then you have magnesium, which matters for muscles, nerves, and overall energy production. In plain American English, cacao can help you feel more awake, more cheerful, and more steady without hitting you like a freight train. It is less of a harsh shove and more of a warm rise, the kind that feels like your body is being fed instead of pushed around. So how can you use it today? The best way is simple and old-fashioned. Use unsweetened cacao powder, not sugary chocolate mixes, and stir it into warm milk, water, or a smoothie. Some folks add a little cinnamon or honey, and that makes a fine homemade tonic on a cool morning. You can also use cacao nibs in oatmeal or yogurt if you want a little crunch. The key is to keep it close to its natural form. That is where the real value is. You are not looking for candy. You are looking for the original bean that old civilizations respected for stamina and well-being. So why did we forget about cacao as a true energy plant? Because Big Pharma and the modern food industry turned it into dessert, stripped it down, loaded it with sugar, and distracted people from what it originally was. Instead of teaching folks about the bean's natural compounds and steady benefits, modern culture sold us candy bars and chemical stimulants. And just like that, one of the world's oldest nourishing energy foods got buried under wrappers, branding, and junk ingredients. The old wisdom did not fail. It just got drowned out by noise and profit. Think of it as an old cast-iron cook stove, warming the whole house slowly and deeply, instead of flaring up fast and leaving you cold an hour later. Number 16. Coffee plant. The legendary bean of morning fire. Back in the day, the coffee plant had a story folks loved to tell. One old tale says Ethiopian goat herders noticed their animals getting downright lively after nibbling on bright red coffee cherries. Before long, people were testing those beans for themselves, and a tradition was born that would spread from Africa to the Middle East and eventually right on to American kitchen tables. And let's be honest, for a whole lot of seniors in this country, coffee is not just a drink. It is memory. It is the smell of the house waking up. It is perking on the stove, clinking in a mug, and getting folks ready for a hard day's work. What our grandparents knew is that coffee was never just about caffeine. It was about ritual, warmth, and getting your engine started. Modern science is finally catching up, and coffee beans contain natural caffeine, along with antioxidants like chlorogenic acids and other plant compounds that may support alertness, mood, and mental sharpness. That is what makes coffee such a classic. The caffeine helps block adenosine, which is one of the chemicals that makes you feel drowsy, so you feel more awake and ready to go. In plain American English, coffee helps clear the fog off the windshield. And those antioxidants mean it is not just a plain old stimulant either. When used wisely, coffee can be one of nature's most familiar tools for waking up the brain and lifting the spirit. So, how can you use it today? Well, most folks already know the simple beauty of brewing a good cup. Fresh ground beans, hot water, and a little patience can still do wonders. Some people like it black, some with cream, and some with just a touch of sweetener the way they have had it for years. But if you want the benefits without overdoing it, moderation is the old-fashioned rule that still holds true. 1 or 2 cups in the morning can give you that pleasant lift without turning your nerves inside out. And if you are feeling adventurous, even coffee grounds can be reused around the homestead in compost or the garden, which is exactly the kind of no-waste wisdom old-time folks appreciated. So why did we forget the simple power of the coffee plant itself? Because Big Pharma and the modern synthetic energy industry took something plain and honest and buried it under sugar bombs, chemical-loaded energy drinks, and fancy products that try to improve on what never needed improving in the first place. The coffee plant gave people steady help for generations, but modern culture turned it into a dessert, a brand, or a laboratory experiment. Somewhere along the line, we stopped respecting the plant and started worshiping the processed version. Think of it as an old farmhouse rooster, reliable, familiar, and still one of the best ways in the world to tell your body it is time to rise and get moving. Number 17. Rhaponticum, Maral root, the alpine root of relentless stamina. Back in the day, up in the Altai and Siberian high country, old hunters noticed something mighty curious. Maral deer would dig through the ground for this root and seem to come back stronger. That is where Maral root got its name. And before long, local healers were using it for overstrain, weakness, and the kind of bone-deep tiredness that follows hard living. What our grandparents knew, and what old-world mountain folk never forgot, is that when nature keeps pointing at a plant, smart people pay attention. Modern science is finally catching up, and researchers have found that Rhaponticum carthamoides contains phytoectosteroids, especially 20-hydroxyectisone, along with other plant compounds being studied for recovery, fatigue resistance, and adaptogenic support. Reviews describe Maral root as a traditional medicinal plant long used in eastern Russia and Siberia for its adaptogenic effect, and newer papers still point to fatigue and weakness as part of its historic reputation. In plain American English, coffee may light a match, but Maral root is more like stacking extra firewood before winter. So how do you use it today? The old-fashioned way is to simmer the dried root into a decoction, low and slow, and sip it when you need staying power more than a quick jolt. These days, people also buy it as extracts, powders, tinctures, and capsules. But the homestead-minded way is still the simple root tea. It is the kind of plant folks reach for when they feel run down and want steadier support instead of another cup that leaves them jittery. So why did we forget about something like this? Because Big Pharma and the modern synthetic medicine world taught people to think energy only comes from stimulants, prescriptions, and man-made shortcuts. A slow, strengthening root from the Siberian mountains does not fit that business model very well. And just like a lot of what our grandparents knew, it got pushed aside, not because it stopped helping, but because simple things are harder to patent and harder to profit from. Think of it as an old log cabin beam, quiet, rugged, and strong enough to hold you up long after flashier materials start to crack. Number 18. Ephedra, Huang, the razor-edge herb of dangerous speed. Back in the day, Huang had a real place in traditional Chinese medicine. For centuries, it was used for things like colds, congestion, coughing, wheezing, and fever. Old healers knew it was powerful, and that is exactly the point here. Powerful is not always the same thing as gentle. Unlike some of the steadier plant tonics on this list, Ephedra was never a front porch tea for everyday sipping. It was the kind of herb people respected because it could move the body hard and fast. Modern science is finally catching up, and researchers know why this plant hits so hard. Ephedra is a natural source of ephedrine and pseudoephedrine, compounds that stimulate the body and can raise alertness and energy. But here is the plain truth in plain American English. That same mechanism can also push the heart and blood pressure in dangerous ways. Federal health agencies say even relatively low doses and short-term use have been linked to high blood pressure, palpitations, heart attack, seizure, stroke, psychosis, and in some cases, death. So how should a person use it today? For most older American adults, The safest answer is simple. Do not use Ephedra as a home energy remedy. In the United States, the FDA declared dietary supplements containing ephedrine alkaloids adulterated because they present an unreasonable risk of illness or injury, and it is illegal to market those supplements. That is especially important for seniors and for anybody with heart, blood pressure, or stimulant sensitivity concerns. So why did we forget about Ephedra? Truth be told, this is one case where forgetting a plant was not just industry trickery or modern hype. This one fell out of favor because the safety concerns were serious and well documented enough for federal regulators to step in. That means Ephedra belongs more in the history lesson than in the kitchen cupboard. Think of it as an old tractor with a stuck throttle. Yes, it can lurch forward with a burst of power, but it may take you somewhere dangerous before you can get your hands back on the wheel. There you have it. 18 incredible plants that can give you natural energy, the kind people relied on long before energy drinks and synthetic stimulants ever showed up. It just goes to show you, sometimes the best solutions are the ones our grandparents already knew about, the ones growing quietly in nature all along. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, because every week we share simple plants, old-fashioned remedies, and homestead wisdom that can help you live healthier and more naturally. And if you're curious about more forgotten plants with powerful benefits, check out the next video on your screen right now. Until next time, take care of yourself, and never forget that nature still has some of the best answers.